Welcome to the School Leadership Show. I'm Mike Dowdy. This is the only podcast dedicated to helping practicing and aspiring school leaders realize their potential, advance their careers, and achieve work-life balance. We bring together the greatest minds from inside and outside of education to deliver you the insights and tools you need to succeed in school leadership. This is the show we wish we had 20 years ago. This show is about you. We're here to help you become the best school leader you can be while still having a life outside of work. In this episode, I interview productivity expert Eric Fisher. His podcast, Beyond the To-Do List, is essential listening for anyone looking to increase their personal productivity and improve their work-life balance. Eric and I talk about rituals, multitasking, getting control of your email, priorities, tools to help you stay focused, and much more. You can learn more about Eric and download his podcast at beyondthetodolist.com. Enjoy this interview with Eric Fisher. So could you start off by telling listeners a little bit about yourself and your background and your work with Beyond the To-Do List?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my whole life I was trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do it? How can I do it better? In school, I was never I was mostly a C and B student. It was never more B and A student. So I had to kind of figure out, okay, well, what am I interested in? Eventually, late high school, figured out that it was stories. So that the way that I filtered that was through English and writing classes as well as history classes. And that kind of clicked and I started to get, better grades. And I took that through to college. And I was always a tech person. So I always liked, recording the radio off of onto cassette tapes, and I always liked to take a video recorder all around and everything like that. So when podcasting came out in 2004, 2005, I immediately knew I wanted to do something with it. It took me a while and a few different attempts or long-term shows there with different people. But Beyond the To-Do List that I started in the late summer of 2011 was my attempt at having conversations with people who I really admired their work and I wanted to know how they did their work so well. And so that's where it started. That's still going. It's almost 3 years now later, and I'm still doing it and really enjoying it, and past 100 episodes. And
yeah, that just happened.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, how often does the podcast come out? You're like once a week-ish?
Yeah, once a week. There's been some seasons in there where there's been less than that frequency, but for the most part, and from this point forward, it is once a week.
So this podcast, the School Leadership Show, is aimed at practicing and aspiring school leaders and trying to help them be more efficient and effective. And I've been a huge fan of the Beyond the To-Do List podcast, so that was why I was so excited that you agreed to this interview, because I think you have a lot that, to bring to that work for school leaders. So, what do you think are the highest leverage habits that school leaders could develop in terms of increasing their productivity?
If I had to guess, I think that it's probably the most needed skill would be to flip back and forth between a macro level and a micro level thinking, to be able to keep the big picture in mind, but then to be able to drill down and really focus in on what are all the details that need to be taken care of for a singular project, class, student, for that matter, but then to be able to drill out again and look at the big picture and then back in again over and over and over again. So it's a constant shifting of perspective, I would say.
Yeah, and I spent about 10 years as an elementary school principal, and you're dead on, because you're dealing with, big picture things at one point, and then the next moment it's, something that one kid did. So so you've interviewed a lot of people about productivity for your podcast. And, what are some of the themes that have emerged over that time? And I'm also curious to know, what are some of the things that most surprised you that you've heard over the last 100 episodes?
In terms of themes, obviously one of the big ones is priorities. and the fact that there's this thing called opportunity cost. And what that means, if you're not familiar with that term, is that by saying yes to one thing, you are spending that quote unquote money or finance on one thing, so you don't have it anymore to say yes to something else as well. And vice versa. If you say no to certain things, then you still have that money in the bank, that decision money in the bank to say yes to other things and spend it later. And I think that's one of the things that we don't take enough time on is we end up saying yes to everything or feeling obligated to say yes to everything. And then we're decisionally bankrupt. I think I may have just coined a term. And we don't have yes anymore to spend on anything else.
All right, so I'm going to stop you there a little bit. So how do you say no? It sounds like the simplest thing in the world, but it's the hardest thing to do.
Well, it is very hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's very hard, especially because there are expectations at play there, both by the external factors of other people and their expectations of you, as well as your own expectations of yourself. You want to say yes to every opportunity because you know that by saying yes to those things, it's going to take you further ahead in your career or into meaning and getting the right things done. The problem is that if you do say yes to all those things, then you're burnt out, and then you actually have it backfire where you get nothing done. And so it really requires a large amount of mindfulness. And by mindfulness, I mean you need to be aware of how much how much is already on your plate, how much is already on your calendar, what season are you in, what can you afford to say yes or say no to, and it kind of takes checking in on, and you need to be graceful about it. I know somebody who says they do not say yes unless they can give a definitive yes. They say maybe, and they say let me check, and then they take that maybe or that let me check as an out to go to go check their calendar, to go check what they do currently have going on, so that they can make a proper decision. You wouldn't fire up, 2 or 3 extra programs on your computer if you've already got 25 open, taking all your RAM. You're not going to pay attention enough to that new thing that you say yes to. That's one of the things you maybe need to consider is if you really want to say yes, but you know that you want to say it, you may need to just say no to some other things or finish up some of the stuff that you already have and just get it out of the cycle so that you can move forward with a yes. It's purely circumstantial, but that's why I say you have to be mindful.
Well, and I think that's a great point. I know I got in the habit of just automatically accepting meeting requests without even looking at the calendar. Oh, it's a meeting. Okay, accept it. And in a lot of the, and I know there's a lot of people out there who do that, and don't pretend that you don't. But there's, in a lot of the software programs, the default for a meeting is an hour. So you get these hour-long meetings that don't need to be an hour, and you mindlessly accept them, and then all of a sudden your calendar's full, and you wonder why you don't have any time. And
we all have the ability to take 8 meetings a day if we're going by an 8-hour work week or day. Sorry. And you could say yes to all of those, or you could say no to some of them if you really investigate, if you're needed there, or if you could prepare something and hand it off, and then they have the information that you would have shared. Or honestly, a lot of meetings can be taken to an online setting and done intermittently throughout the week and actually be much more productive that way.
Well, and I love that idea of using maybe as time to get ready to say no. I mean, or at least buying
That's
yourself
true.
a little bit of time.
Yeah, it can be a good setup to not immediately say yes, so they don't think they have you. And again, that actually could backfire as well, because some people will say, oh, they're saying maybe. I need to really sell them on this. And that's great, but while you do look at your calendar, maybe they can come up with better reasons as to why you should say yes, and then maybe you can consider those as well. Again, it depends on what it is.
Now, you mentioned earlier a couple of times about seasons, depending on what season you're in. Now, folks who haven't listened to your podcast might not know what you're talking about with that. We talk spring, summer. What do you mean by seasons?
Well, it could be just that. It could be literal seasons. Some of us do better work or pay better attention to things uh, during sunny times of the year. The winter can be a drag, but it also can mean what commitments do you have on your plate, or what commitments do you have in this current time frame, which may overlap natural seasons, but it could be certain seasons like, and especially in the school world, you've got summer vacation and you've got um, semesters. So you only have a certain, thing you're covering for a certain semester and then you move on. That kind of thinking in terms of start, process, and then finish and completion, and knowing what you have in those given chunks of time that you're responsible for.
So really a different way of chunking your time.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, well, as you've been interviewing all these people about productivity, what were some of the things that jumped out that surprised you? They thought, geez, I really hadn't thought about that.
That it's okay to say no. That was one of the main ones. And then as far as priorities go, is that you can't have lots of priorities. You really can only have, about a handful or two handfuls at most. But then you still have to order those. Like you can't just say, okay, I have 10 priorities, because then all 10 of those priorities will still confound you as much as the 20. You'll just feel worse because I pared it down. I should be doing better at this. No, because you didn't order those in terms of which were the highest priority.
Right. Everything can't
And
be
keep
equally
them away.
important.
Exactly. Yeah,
Now,
brushing my teeth can't be equal weight as hanging out with my kids.
exactly. Well, great. I tell you, leading right into what I was thinking about next. Is work-life balance a myth?
um, it's hard to answer that because I think some people think that work life balance. I mean, I had somebody come on and say that it was really, they think of it as blending, where their life is just blended together. So and again, it's in a sense, if you go back to that macro and micro level, it's about zooming in and zooming out on what's important at the moment. And sometimes, you know, I've talked to people where they've spent a ton of time working for the day or the week, and then they shift, and then the next week it's a very kid heavy, family heavy moment. And I think that's one of the things is we're not living in the same world where you can leave your work, and teachers especially know this. You can't leave your work at work. You're sometimes doing it into the evening, uh, and so that can take the place of family life. But if that's the case, if you know that that is the case, then you can plan ahead and say, okay, hey, I got a couple things, a couple nights this week I got to take care of stuff, but then this weekend we're going out of town, And so I think it's like balancing, but you just have to be aware of the balance without having too much tension about it. You kind of got to let some slack happen.
Yeah, that concept of blending seems to make sense. It kind of takes it away from that dichotomy of it's one or the other.
Exactly. And that's what balance infers. Is it's like, okay, are you balancing on the left, or are you trying that constant tension of trying to go one way or the other, when you just kind of no, let it go and just kind of slack one way or the other and know that you're doing it, and then it's okay.
Now, you're 100 episodes in, so you must put in some pretty significant time creating all the content and producing your content. What have you found, or what habits have you developed personally that have made you more efficient and effective to, help maintain that balance?
Um, Being, again, going back to seasons, being adaptable with the schedule. Today, for example, is the first day that everybody in my house is home with me, and so it's very different. It will be a different schedule though, because my daughter is done with school today, and she's home, but they've got some errands and some fun things they're going to go do. But it's a whole different schedule. I have to figure out. I've been working on a certain schedule for the past few months now, and that's great. But I also know that it's at a certain point in time in the afternoon, if I really want to still be able to focus and not be interrupted at all, I have other places I need to take my laptop and go. And so That's one of the main ones. Another one is just having that routine of, since I'm working from home on the podcast as well as my day job from home, it's one of those things where I need to have morning and evening rituals where I make sure that I start up well and get my mind focused and ready and clear by doing certain things, as well as having a wind down time at the end of the day, and even kind of leaving the baton, if you will, in a place where I can quickly pick it back up again by myself, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. So, and really thinking about your morning, but starting to think about it the evening before. And having things
Exactly.
lined up. Yeah. I talked to Jeff Sanders a lot about that whole idea of being intentional about your morning and evening routines to kind of put off that decision fatigue as long as you can.
Yeah, and I really, Jeff is one of those guys I really like. So
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to listen to. So you just mentioned, you said, you take your laptop and go somewhere else. So, trying to, obviously go someplace to focus. What do you think about multitasking? I know a lot of my colleagues, they're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm a great multitasker." They fire up their laptop in meetings, and I know that I can't pay attention to two things at once. But I think there's this myth out there that people can. What's been your experience with that?
well, let me take that example. If you're firing up your laptop in a meeting and you're doing something else other than being fully present in the meeting you're in, then you're half doing both those things. So you can do more than you. It's not a myth. Multitasking is not a myth. However, the tasks that you're doing, you're half doing. So is that worth it? Probably not. There are certain things that are tasks, quick task switching. For example, one of the things that happens like that is if you set up and run an automated process, um, and then move to doing something else while that is doing its own thing, that's more like delegating. You're quickly delegating across. Okay, computer, you do this. Cell phone, you do this. iPad, you do this. I'm going to make a phone call. That's not really multitasking, but you're doing multiple tasks, or you're achieving multiple tasks at the same time. So it's not a either or. It's not a yes it is or no it isn't. It's more of a, how much attention am I giving to the right things I need to give attention to at this given moment.
Well, and you'd probably agree, right, that attention is a finite resource, and you only have so much to
Oh
give.
yeah, yeah.
How about how about email? We'll get really into the weeds here. What are some techniques that you found effective for managing email?
I put it off. And it's true, but seriously, it is true. That is one of the things that I do, is that I will do a first pass. I try to delete. First off, I try to actually unsubscribe from getting anything I don't need to get. That's the first thing. And you'd be surprised if you go into, if you have a search bar in your email, you can type the word unsubscribe. Everything that you can unsubscribe to that has that word in it will pop up, and then you can go through it and say, "Oh man, I'm still getting that. I never read it," and you can unsubscribe from it.
That's a great
So
idea.
get rid of the stuff get rid of the stuff you don't need. First off, you get less. Then once you're getting less, you can also look through and quickly go and say, okay, this does not require a response from me, and you can either archive it, delete it, or respond to it if you need to, just to say, okay, I saw this. Number three is if this is something that's going to take me longer to do than I have right now, that's when I put it off. I will procrastinate on purpose, to borrow the term from Rory Vaden, and I will throw that into I use the mailbox app on my phone, and also the beta on my desktop. And what that does is I can say, send this back to me this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow, or next week, certain point in time, and I can then say, and then I've not completely avoided making a decision on the email. I've made a decision that right now is not the time for me to deal with that email, but I want it to come back around when the time is right for me to really focus in on it. So I allow myself to do that, and then the rest of what's sitting there, if it's quick and easy responses, I do that. If it's a little bit longer response, but I need to do it soon, then I'll do that. And again, those might fall into the come back around later this afternoon. And what I've found is that creates a momentum of, oh, I only have 3 or 5 emails sitting here to have to deal with. Cool. Instead of 10, 20 plus.
Right. I have colleagues who get hundreds a day, and I think
Yeah,
a lot.
that's
It's insane, and I think a lot of it is that garbage that you said. Stuff that you can unsubscribe from and things like that. And also, I think there's depending on the culture of your organization or where you're working, it some people treat email like instant messaging
oh
and
yeah.
and expect this immediate response. So I found that just by delaying my response, I can sort of set the expectations a little bit differently, that it's more like mail and less like instant messaging. So I wanted to ask you, I got a 3, 2, 1 here as we approach the end of our time. What are 3 resources, like books, blogs, videos, that you think people should take a look at in the next month related to productivity? And you can't use Beyond the To-Do List because we're going to plug that one anyway. So,
Um, okay, so what resource would I suggest? Um, I would say one of the things, like if you really have trouble sitting down and focusing when you're at your computer or even reading, I would suggest Focus at Will. That's one of my favorite things to use as a tool. It's not music per se, but it is composed musical sounds, and it's definitely entertaining in the sense that you can enjoy listening to it. But what it does is it eliminates or uh, numbs your fight or flight response. And so what that means is while you're sitting there focused doing the thing you're wanting to and needing to do, the music makes it so that your brain doesn't wander and think, is there something else I should be doing right now? Or I wonder what so and so's doing, or is there someone around me that I need to look up and pay attention to? And the music is composed in that way that it eliminates that.
and it's not music that you're like singing along to or has words to distract
No,
you, right?
no. And that's the main thing, is that it has no singing or words, because that, or even some certain types of instrumentation that mimic subconsciously the human voice,
Yeah.
because the human voice will distract you and it'll yank you out of your focus, because it seems like it's a person talking, and you have to question every time, is this something I do need to pay attention to or not?
Where can people find out about that's focusatwill.com?
Yeah, you can check that out over at focusatwill.com.
Okay. All right. Two
That
more.
that's the biggest.
That's the
Yeah,
biggest
okay.
one.
Let's see. That one is the biggest one I always tell everybody. Let's see. Trying to think of what else I can share with you that will make a pretty decent impact. I would say make sure to if you haven't ever read David Allen's Getting Things Done, he just came out with a new an updated version. It originally came out in 2001. Well, we've changed things a lot since then, and so now there's a 2015 version, and that really just walks you through some of the basics that you really just need to think of in terms of inputs and decision making and outputs and organizing and, for lack of better words, getting things done.
I love his work. It's for a lot of people. He's the guy. He kind of started it all with productivity.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah, he really got the ball rolling in that direction.
Okay. Any other
Let's see.
resources?
Um, I would say don't always rely on digital. I use pen and paper a lot because I can cross it off and it just feels better momentum wise. So
I'm with you. I went back to carrying the little sheet of paper in my pocket, and it's my to-do list. All right. How about what do you think are the 2 biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to personal productivity?
I would say there's a lot of them, and I would go back to that whole saying no thing. I think we don't say it often enough, and we don't say it for the right reasons, and I think that's one of the major mistakes right there. But if I had to come up with others, I would say just not capturing something and thinking you're going to remember it on your own. That is really impossible. You can only hold so many things in your brain at the same time. And, once you get to about 3 or 4 different things you're supposed to actively be remembering, if you're not trained well, you can't do it. And you start to lose those.
Absolutely. How about one thing that school leaders could start doing tomorrow that would increase their productivity?
I would say, man, what's one thing that could cross the board for everybody? I would say, before you end your day today, even as you're listening to this, before you end your day today, write down a simple to-do list for what you need to do tomorrow. That if you were, here's the best way to frame it. If you're going to have a substitute tomorrow, prepare for them today. And then when you come in tomorrow as that substitute and it's you're better prepared already.
Tell you, I think I restarted having that paper to-do list maybe about 6 months ago. And I don't know why I ever stopped doing it. And you're right. You just can't remember to do all the stuff. I think mostly it's getting older, right? I'm blaming it on that.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Eric, you're a Rochester guy, and I live in the Rochester, New York area, and I couldn't resist. You got to tell me, what do you usually get on your garbage plates?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've had one, a proper one, that I'm trying to remember what all I used to get. I know that I would get hamburger over hot dog most of the time. Sometimes I feel like I've had White Hots on there, and that's really good.
Yeah. Mac salad.
Cheese.
Okay.
Yep, mac salad.
French fries or
home fries, obviously.
Okay.
Home fries are easier, I think, because you can keep it into smaller bites with your fork so that it's not going. I mean, it's one thing to have the plate be garbage, but it's another to have the entire table be garbage. And let's see, I think the chili sauce, is that right?
Oh yeah, the meat hot sauce.
Yeah,
yep.
Meat hot sauce. And let's see, so
onions.
I feel like I'm missing something.
Onions, mustard.
Ketchup.
Yep. All right.
Onions and mustard, ketchup, all that.
So when you woke up today, did you think you were going to talk about garbage plates?
No, I didn't.
I love it. So, Eric Fisher, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me here and to share your experience and knowledge with aspiring and practicing school leaders. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, it's easy. You can just go to one place to figure out how to listen to the show or grab everything else that I'm doing, and that's beyondthetodolist.com.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders by school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to mike@schoolleadershipshow.com. Consider rating the podcast in iTunes and leaving a comment. And please pass the show along to your colleagues.